a mature adult would most likely say, honestly, I felt really hurt.
Yeah.
And they would slip into vulnerability of like, I feel like you don't really care about me as much as you once did. And can we reconnect? Like, what's going on here?
Exactly.
See how much more mature that sounded than you didn't text me on my birthday. It's like, what are we, 6 years old still? So
what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is emotional immaturity, and what is the difference? What does it look and feel like in the every single day versus emotional maturity, i.e. the people who are extremely emotionally immature? What does that look like? How do I know to spot those? What are the signs? Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and singles from all over the world, welcome back to another very special episode of the Conscious Couples podcast for episode number 62. The quickest way to eliminate drama.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right? The quickest way to eliminate drama. So I, as always, want to thank the Next Level Podcast Solutions team for producing this podcast, audio, video, all of the above. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to open it with your intention, sweetheart, and then I'm going to set the stage because this one, I believe, will be the most valuable episode that we've ever done. I know it's a bold statement, state and prove here, but it was certainly a breakthrough that I had that I'll never forget, that I want to share with our listeners today. We want to share with our listeners. And honestly, I want to give you credit because you're the one who created this framework that I will never forget. So what's your intention for today's episode, my love?
Appreciate you, love. Okay, so my intention for us is to really help our listeners understand the downside of emotional immaturity and to help create that first step forward to eliminate the drama in their life.
Okay, so well said, love. Very concise.
Trying to be.
My goodness. Yes, it is concise.
It was.
All right, so I'm going to set the stage here. I had no idea that emotional maturity is actually a triad. We're going to get into that. But Emilia and I, as you know, if you listen to this show, we had a Relationship Talks virtual event for the month of March. No, April.
This was April.
It was April.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was April 11th, I think, or 12th or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it was on how to have a drama-free relationship. And to set the stage way, way, way back when Emilia and I first met, this was probably 6 months into us meeting. We're in her backyard, and we started talking about how couples fight all the time and that kind of stuff. And you basically said, we're never going to fight. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking back to my childhood, and my mom and stepdad would fight, and I saw a lot of other couples that would fight, and my friends' parents, XYZ. It was just something I witnessed a lot of drama. I grew up in a lot of drama. And so to me, it was like, okay, well, I want to be with you forever. You want to be with me forever. How is that going to be possible? How are we going to go decades, a whole lifetime without fighting? How is that possible? And so here we are 4 years later, and I'm proud to say that we've never fought. There have been what we refer to as passionate debates, and there's definitely been challenging moments where we needed to take a minute or whatever. But what I once believed was impossible is not only possible, but my actual life right now. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this is a really big deal, so I wanted to talk about it. No, I'm kidding, but here's my point. I now understand why this was possible. Because I would always say, there's no way that would be possible without you. Mm-hmm. Because I know that, at times I'm not as emotionally mature as you are. And now I understand why that is. I never realized why I was saying it's more you than me. Obviously, it takes both of us, okay?
For sure.
And I've also said this before, and I want all our listeners to really kind of take this in and think about their own life here. This isn't about me and Emilia. This is about you, always. But I remember saying when I met you, you were 25, mm-hmm. and I think I was 20. I think I was 30, and then you came to my 31st birthday, something like that. I know I'm 6 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I met you, I remember thinking there's no way the 25-year-old version of me could be with the 25-year-old version of her. And so for those of you who don't know, if you're a new listener, I'm 6.5 years older than Emilia.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say there's no way that the version of me at her age could be with her now. And the reason I say that, I never realized why, is because of emotional maturity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that I'm the most emotionally mature person or anything like that. What I will say is, and I'm just going to say this straight up, I do believe that statistically speaking, men tend to be more emotionally immature than women. And I think there's a ton of cultural and societal and biological reasons for that. So I'm not trying to hate on anyone here, but I do believe that's true. And I never understood the value of emotional maturity. I never understood my level of emotional maturity. I never understood the formula of emotional maturity. And that's what today's episode is about. We have a digital asset for everyone. It's in the show notes. You can click the link. It's a triad, and I'll go through it very briefly, and I'll have you define it because it's your work. Really, it's not my work. It's Emilia's work. And I want to help it land for people because I never understood this at all. Here's the money quote right here. I never knew this before. This is what I want everyone to realize. The level of drama in your life is directly correlated to the emotional immaturity of your peers. We've all heard the quote of you're the sum average of the people you spend the most time with. I never understood that I live a very drama-free life right now compared to my past. And that's because I'm more emotionally mature, and the people I've attracted into my life are more emotionally mature. And now, hopefully that lands for the listeners in a brand new way. That was a breakthrough for me, even though I know you've been studying this stuff for a very long time, my love. For other people, I don't think they've ever really connected that. And maybe they have. Maybe I just didn't. But I never connected drama. The root cause of drama is emotional immaturity, period. And that doesn't mean you can't have fun. That doesn't mean you can't be playful. That doesn't mean you can't play with your ego and be emotionally immature at times proactively as a leader or as a person. That doesn't mean we can't be playful. It means that if there's genuine emotional immaturity, there's going to be drama that comes with that. And so without further ado, let's go to the triad. Here's the triad. Okay? Emotional maturity equals number 1, emotional intelligence, plus number 2, emotional regulation, plus number 3, emotional adaptability. Now, Emilia is going to go through each because she's the one who understands this far deeper than I do. I'm just starting to learn this now. So go ahead, sweetheart.
Yeah. So in our event, what we did, and I have one of the money slides right here in front of me. That's what I wanted to pull up because I wanted everyone of our listeners to kind of think about, number 1, if this is the first time you're kind of connecting the dots between drama and emotional immaturity or the inverse correlation between that. I want people to bring it into their lives, i.e., what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is emotional immaturity, and what is the difference? What does it look and feel like in the every single day versus emotional maturity, i.e., the people who are extremely emotionally immature? What does that look like? How do I know to spot those? What are the signs? And for those who are emotionally mature, what can I look for, and how will I know and feel that in my bones? Because say, for example, I am a listener and I do want to get rid of that drama and I want to do it the quickest way possible. I got to know what to look for. So before we get into the triangle and defining that, I really want to start by defining what really, or acknowledging what are the signs of emotional immaturity. So these are the individuals that will show these signs, and you can bet a lot of money that if they're showing these signs, there's likely going to be drama that either precedes or proceeds it. So number 1 is impulsive behavior. You see that all the time. Number 2 is demanding attention.
Attention seekers.
Attention seekers.
Really land on this one. Now remember, people are good at hiding it. The attention seekers of the room, usually it's the person who's barking the loudest, who's the most insecure. The attention seekers, that's a big indicator. But remember, they're sneaky with it. And again, I also want to acknowledge here too, every one of us is emotionally immature in certain ways.
course.
including myself. I didn't realize how emotionally immature I was until I started studying this with you, and I'm realizing that the equation, I think I'm really good at like 2/3 of it, but there's one that I'm really not good at, which we'll get into later. But I want our listeners to self-identify of, honestly, I might be emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you are emotionally immature, you're going to attract drama into your life because like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together.
Exactly. And I forgot to give an example of this first sign. So impulsive behavior. I have a friend who was extremely impulsive in their past relationship. Luckily, that's no longer the case as much as now. However, when they first got into a relationship, they had gotten a dog. They were talking about marriage really quick, and it was like so fast, so quick. And there's some people where that works out. There's other people who just really are not logically thinking through some really big life decisions. And that's really impulsive behavior. Some people might go into a grocery store and you might walk in there and all of a sudden you come out with a whole cart full of snacks that you don't need, that you already have your cabinets full of. That's
Never
also
go
impulsive.
to the grocery store hungry.
Exactly. So, all right. The other sign is name calling and disrespect. So who here that's listening has felt when you go into an interaction with someone that either you were called a derogatory or mean name, and afterwards you kind of like leave feeling kind of in a daze because there was laughter and whatnot, and someone indirectly disrespected you and you didn't realize it at the time because there's playful, fun, laughter, smiling. But
these are people who have fun at your expense. They make fun at your expense.
Yeah.
They try to brighten a room, but it's at your detriment. And we all kind of know that feeling. They're poking fun, and that's the term.
Yeah, they're not laughing with you. They're actually laughing at you. We've all been there before where you realize that after the fact, and then it's like, oh, crap, that sucks.
And it's often disguised as laughing with you.
Yeah.
So watch out.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's also the avoidance of any sort of vulnerability. So people who are emotionally immature, this is one thing that I struggled with a lot and still do and at times, is when there's vulnerability that could really draw a relationship together, but yet there's avoiding it because you don't know necessarily how to go about that.
What is vulnerability?
Vulnerability is getting deep into your emotions and deep into your feels, into your emotions, and sharing what that is, what your experience is.
Expressing
with the
a fear,
person.
for example. Like, I'm really fearful in this moment that we're not connected, or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Just wanted to share.
Exactly. So people who are emotionally immature tend to never get into vulnerability. And so they avoid any sort of conflict or vulnerability like the plague. They guilt trip others a lot. So if you didn't go to Easter, you're the first one to get a text of like, oh, we missed you. Sad you couldn't come. Next time you better be there, right? Like all very nice. And then a jab into the guilt tripping of why you didn't fulfill the role that other people have in the head.
I want to tell this story briefly about guilt tripping.
Mm-hmm.
I get into the gym and I care for this person deeply, but honestly, and I'm going to keep it anonymous, this person does struggle with emotional immaturity at times. And I grew up with him, and we get into the gym and I'm literally like blown away because he looks like a superhero. And it's like, you are crushing it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And he's like, you didn't text me on my birthday.
Oh,
and all I could think was, dude, we're 30. Like, what are we doing here, right? And also, you didn't text me on mine, and I don't care. And again, I'm not trying to be hateful. I do care for this person deeply, but that's emotionally immature.
Yeah.
And that's a guilt trip.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guilt trip. You didn't text me on my birthday. Oh, okay, brother. Like, who cares? And again, he was being somewhat playful for it, but there's some truth under that.
Yeah.
Now, there's two sides to that coin quickly. One, he didn't feel cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable. The way he reacted to that was guilt tripping. That is emotional immaturity. Adults, quote unquote, but a mature adult would most likely say, honestly, I felt really hurt.
Yeah.
And they would slip into vulnerability of like, I feel like you don't really care about me as much as you once did. And can we reconnect? Like, what's going on here?
Exactly.
See how much more mature that sounded than you didn't text me on my birthday. It's like, what are we, 6 years old still? So
oftentimes, I'm glad you shared that because we'll circle back to that when we talk about emotional regulation and or how we respond, because we often experience guilt trips and they're very in a playful tonality. You can see them at work, you can see them at family, you can see them in our intimate relationships, friends, etc. when you don't actually meet the mold of what someone else has in their minds of you, or when you don't show a behavior that as what they wanted of you. So that happens all the time. So that's
That's
you know,
the whole,
another.
well, we had a blast, but of course you weren't there.
Right, you weren't there. The guilt tripping. And then I'll just do one last sign, which is the lack of empathy or remorse. So when someone does guilt trip you, they don't even really care or think about what your emotional experience might have. So someone might have, like, for example, we have a client whose mother is very, very challenging in her word choice towards her child. And this child is an actual adult, but when she says really harmful, mean words, she doesn't really think about the implications of how that can hurt at the deepest points of this individual's life. And so when there's no empathy or there's no remorse for how we say something, it's like throwing daggers and then looking the other way and being okay with it hitting someone you love and care about. That's a sign of emotional immaturity. So
another quick example would be, and just to bring it back to that story, the person who said you didn't text me on my birthday, they're not thinking about, well, what must have happened on that day. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he runs a business. Maybe I'm not the center of his universe.
right.
And again, I'm being playful here, but that's a lack of empathy.
Right.
He's not worried about what my day was like. He's worried about his birthday. And again, that's emotional immaturity. So
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Derek, and I just wanted to talk about relationship talks with Alan and Emilia. If you're looking to get some help on working with your relationships, you should definitely give them a shot. They can help you identify certain patterns on things that maybe you didn't realize that you've done or that have happened. And if you want to be able to just start really kind of narrowing down the things that you can work on now that'll help you be more efficient for future relationships or even the one that you're in, they're definitely the ones to go see, as clearly they lead an example of what a great relationship should look like. And just in general, they're both incredibly intelligent and smart with just being able to pick out the things that maybe either you missed or that you knew but didn't really quite click yet. So you should definitely give them a shot because they're very, very helpful and efficient at what they do.
okay, so now the triad. So hopefully you've downloaded the link if you're not driving.
Yeah.
Take a look at this asset. Emilia just created it. Very powerful. It's a triangle, and at the top is emotional intelligence. The bottom left, again, is emotional regulation. The bottom right is emotional adaptability. Now, the archetype of each of these, emotional intelligence, think of like a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional regulation, think of Buddha. Very,
Mhm.
very, wise and regulated,
Mm-hmm.
not freaking out about anything. And then on the bottom right, you've got a chameleon. Okay, and so we're going to go into each now.
So we chose those icons that you'll see in the digital asset. And if you haven't pulled that up, I would highly recommend this. Even if you aren't primarily a visual learner, it will really help you deepen your understanding of this, which is going to be vital in the quickest way to eliminate that drama in your life. So Alan had mentioned emotional maturity. It's just like a formula. It's an equation. It is emotional intelligence plus emotional regulation plus adaptability. And in the relationship talks event, what we did is we had slides that showed from 0 to 10, where are you at to get yourself a baseline? Okay, so if you are listening to this episode, the first one, I'll define emotional maturity by these words. Essentially, it's a spectrum. Again, 0 to 30, because it comprises of these three elements.
0 to 10 times 3.
Exactly.
So 0 to 10 for the first one. Let's go through that.
Yep. Okay. So emotional maturity in a nutshell is the degree of drama creation versus intolerance that you have in your life. So for the first element, emotional intelligence, like you said, it is the scientist or the baby. So
Okay, so think 0 to 10, and the baby's on the far left,
Mhm.
and the scientist is on the far right. Go ahead, love.
Yes, exactly. So people who are highly emotionally intelligent, again, this is why we have the scientists on that digital asset, because they know the ins and outs of what this concept is. They know what their emotions are. They can discern between what the difference is between guilt and shame, how it feels. They know how to navigate in and out of a situation, be it drama filled or not, and when to deploy the right communication skills, the right emotions, and the right emotionally mature skill sets for that particular room.
So at the event, you used an example of who here knows the 6 basic human emotions.
Yes.
And only 2 people in the room, including not me, raised their hand.
Right.
that would mean that we're not as emotionally intelligent as we could be, or as this archetype of scientist.
Right.
And so if you don't know the difference between disgust and anger, or you don't know the difference between guilt and shame, or you don't know the difference between joy and pleasure, that would be someone who is less emotionally, quote unquote, intelligent.
Truth.
Okay.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, babe.
You're welcome.
Okay. So then this is the third element. Okay. Again, where's your baseline? The second element, emotional regulation. So this is where the Buddha comes in, right? How often are you going into situations where you are finding that people are just reacting with whatever comes out? They're verbal diarrheaing on everyone. They're reacting out of scarcity or fear. And instead, they're not really taking a moment to like the Buddha, kind of take a moment and go into the mind, breathe, and respond.
So picture a little kid. I did this when I was a kid. When I was like 6, I screamed into my pillow. That is not emotional regulation. I don't know what to do with these emotions. I'm going to scream into my pillow to try to get it out. That is not emotional regulation. And that's a good example of emotional immaturity. And again, I was 6. So a 6-year-old that acts like a 6-year-old is great. A 6-year-old or a 60-year-old that acts like a 6-year-old, not so much. So I just wanted to share that to give that.
I think about like the child going with the mom or dad to a grocery store, and when they want something
and they can't get the
and
Reese's.
They can't get it, what they want, they start freaking out and crying and screaming, stomping, whatever protest behavior comes out that like is a reaction in the moment that they have zero control over to try to get whatever they want back.
So the way
control.
I reacted when McDonald's was out of McFlurries?
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. When they had no ice cream and we were like, what the heck? Right? Very different than the person who is emotionally regulated, and when their children starts crying or screaming, or McDonald's doesn't have ice cream when we want McFlurries, right? We take a moment. We don't necessarily totally Buddha up and just like sit cross-legged. We're being playful with this, but on the scale of 10 of this, that's kind of that level where you are totally in control of how your response is to the situation. So that means adjusting your physiology through the breath, leading by the breath, and adapting your breathing, your physiology, your mind, the thoughts that are in your mind, to be able to have the type of response that is appropriate to whatever the situation is, and this typically doesn't happen in family gatherings. I know everyone's experienced that, and very little emotional regulation. I know there's been plenty of parties that I've gone to in the past where this is when alcohol comes in. People are not emotionally regulated. Eventually it ends up spiraling out of control with fights. Oh, geez. That came so quick.
Yeah, it did. Imagine a backyard barbecue that you got to a little late, and it is what's the term? Shit show. And you know that you're the only sober one, and you're like, you know what? I think I have to go because I know this is about to be an emotionally deregulated night.
Yeah.
Either that or you drink really fast, which I've made the mistake to do. So I don't recommend that. You should probably leave. But that's what we're talking about here. So again, picture on the far left, kid screaming into pillow.
Yeah.
Or me at McDonald's when they don't have McFlurries. I'm kidding. And then a 10 being just Buddha, totally relaxed. No matter what's going on outside, totally relaxed on the inside.
Okay. So then this is the third element of emotional maturity. This is emotional adaptability. So in the digital asset, you'll see my favorite. It's a rainbow chameleon. And we chose that the archetype chameleon because, as you may know, basic, school lessons, a chameleon can adapt no matter what surrounding it's put in. So literally color shifting, it's so amazing. And I think that that's what's actually really cool, because a lot of people think about adapting to your environment and adapting to the situation is a really bad thing. It doesn't have to be bad. There's actually so many amazing skills that are developed when you are highly emotionally adaptive, meaning when you go in from shifting into home mode, right? Being very loving and intimate with your partner, and then you have a drive to work, let's say. There's an emotional adaptability process that you're really going through when you shift out of the home into your car, into a meeting, let's say with your boss in a professional environment, right? The adaptability of your emotions is extremely important, and the skill set to do that is so powerful. Some of us do it so much though that we lose bits and pieces and parts of ourselves. So that's where that kind of gets its bad rep of being a chameleon to whatever environment, because if Alan wants a McFlurry that's Oreo with M&Ms, then I do too, right? Instead of taking a moment, again, to the 0 to 10 scale of this, if you were to get your own baseline of like, is it by default whenever you go into a new environment or in a relationship, let's say your partner, are you always choosing what they choose, adapting so much? Or on the other end of this, are you a 0 and you're not adapting no matter what situation? So you're the same exact person when you're at home, intimate with your loved ones. You go into the car and then you end up in a meeting with your boss and you're literally that same person. There's pluses, pros and cons with both of them. And that's where understanding what your baseline is and knowing your audience, knowing the surroundings and knowing what's appropriate. That's where all of these come in, where emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and emotional adaptability, all of those woven together is where emotional maturity really is.
Okay, so to wrap this all up, this is a lot of information for a podcast episode. So if anyone has any questions, please reach out to us directly. You can email us, DM us on social media, you name it. Please download the asset as well. So I'm going to wrap this all up in a bow. Mm-hmm. Emotional intelligence is your knowledge of emotions and how they work. Mm-hmm. Emotional regulation is your ability to respond to your emotions rather than quickly react during trigger moments.
Yep.
Emotional adaptability is the ability to deploy proactively the proper amount of you at the proper time, aka don't speak to a second grader the exact same as you would an 80-year-old, right? Because they are different and they require different parts of you. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that wraps it all in a bow. Obviously you can see how they all feed each other. Mm-hmm. And if you're good at only one of them, I do believe everyone has one they're really good at, one they're probably not so good at, and then one decent one. And I hope that our listeners can also really understand and identify which one's their good one, which one's their bad one, and which one's the one that's decent. Work on the bad one because that's where the biggest growth opportunity is. And then before we go, love, what is it like? What does it feel like? At the beginning, we described what it feels like to be around, or how to identify emotionally immature people. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk about what it feels like to be around emotionally mature people.
Yeah. And again, not necessarily good or bad, but rather just like, where's your baseline and what is the scale? So what it feels like being around emotionally mature people is excited and energized. You get excited and energized by being around them. So everyone, think of that person that you have in mind that whenever you listen to them on the Conscious Couples podcast, you feel energized and excited. No, I'm kidding. But think of that one person that you always, whenever you spend or exchange time with them, be it text, their gifts are always on point. You feel good. Yeah, you feel good. And that kind of relates to the second thing where there's an energetic exchange where there's great gratitude at the center point. There's good vibes in the mix. You can feel it, right? It's kinetic. Okay, so then also, you feel as though you're seen, heard, and understood by these individuals. People who are emotionally mature spend a great deal of their energy and effort being others focused, not necessarily to the detriment of themselves, but they proactively create space to try to see you, to hear you, and to understand you. And that is a huge distinction in terms of where emotionally immature people just really are so self-centered and self-focused. They literally cannot and are incapable of creating that space to really see, feel, and understand you.
And here's something to describe about that. The emotionally immature person, think of like the really spoiled child who, when they don't get their ice cream cone, they're stomping and screaming at the expense of the rest of the grocery store.
Everyone has to walk on eggshells,
that whole thing. Yeah. Now picture someone who's emotionally mature, who's focused on serving ice cream to others. Mm-hmm. That's an others conscious individual versus a self-conscious individual. And that's the best way to describe it. All of us are self-conscious at times. Mm-hmm. All of us are selfish at times. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that we all can grow in this arena. And I do want us to wrap up, but we still have a couple more here, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. So you feel valued in your differences with emotionally mature people. Mm-hmm. And there's always that authentic connection. It's not something where you walk out of that and you're questioning, you're like, did that actually really go well? Or were they laughing at me? Like there's never any of that questioning. So your intuition really does know who's emotionally immature and who's not. What I do find is that there's a little bit of delusion around family. We like to believe that our families are typically emotionally mature, where the behaviors are actually really different. So hopefully this episode has given you some signs to identify of not only family but relationships where ourselves are emotionally immature, and where we can, like you said, babe, work on our weaknesses. And what's great about this is emotional maturity, that's a skill. All of these are skills, and that's what we said in the event. Skills that you can develop as you work on them. But if you don't have any awareness to them, again, it's like anything else, you can't work on it. So get a baseline and then see which one you want to work for. And there's so many different suggestions that we could have if you were to jump on a call with us. But yeah, that's pretty much the signs of being around emotionally mature people.
The question I had written is, how emotionally mature are your peers, your family, and your partner? And most importantly, yourself. The amount of drama in your life will be directly correlated to the emotional maturity of you and the people in it. That has got to be one of the most powerful quotes I've ever contemplated. And I now understand why I have such a drama-free life, because I used to be emotionally immature compared to what I am now, and I used to attract a lot of and tolerate a lot of emotionally immature people. And so you've helped me so much with this, sweetheart. Thank you so much.
That's heavy.
And thank you to all of our listeners for listening, and we hope that you can come up in this. And remember, it's going to be uncomfortable when you get the drama out of your life, because it can feel a little bit boring at times.
So true.
Because when you're so used to drama, it can feel a little boring. That means it's working. It's a beautiful thing. That's when you find yourself.
I have just really quick, I have a client who actually said this. She told me when we first started coaching, she's like, I have these highs and I have these lows, and it's like, this is it. We got into this. And she's like, oh, now I understand why there's so much drama in my relationship, because I've been wired to crave the highs and be okay and get excited for the lows in a weird way. And that's a vicious cycle when we are in and conditioned to be in drama attracting, drama filled relationships. And now that we're raising her emotional maturity levels through these things, it's like, my life is actually like really peaceful. It's like kind of like, I feel like that like old lady that just has so much peace and fulfillment and alignment. And it's like, yeah, that's what can happen, and not in a bad way. It's almost like at one point she didn't believe that was possible. So that I just want to share, because it is something that, to your point, babe, can feel initially boring to someone who's so drama addicted.
I didn't know what was wrong. My life always felt so chaotic, and I didn't understand what was wrong. There was two things wrong. Number one, I was emotionally immature and not well developed enough. And number two, the people in my life also were not. And so at 26, I went all in on personal growth, and I got more emotionally mature, and so did my peers, and so did my partner. And so it really is magnificent. This is, in my opinion, the most important episode we've ever done. I know I say that often, but remember, this is episode 62. So this is a new, wiser, more emotionally mature version of me saying this is the one.
True.
This is the one, in my opinion.
Share this with y'all friends.
Share it with your friends, your family, and your immature peers. Okay, so we have another event coming up, obviously, and thank you to everyone who joined us on the last one.
Yeah, that was a blast.
May 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 3 biggest risks to your relationship failing. This could mean, if you do not shore up these weaknesses, you could get divorced in the future, or you could break up with your partner. So if you want your love to last, join us on this event, May 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there.
And if you and your partner, or if you are having a hard time and you want to be on the same page with your partner and you realize that you're just not, maybe you listen to this episode and you realize, oh man, my partner, or oh man, I'm extremely emotionally immature and I'm causing all of these challenges in the relationship and I need help, right? If you need that safe space, Alan and I make sure that we allocate 30 minutes on our calendar every single Saturday. And it is a safe, private, completely free zone where you and your partner, or you, and if you just want it to be you can jump on, and Alan and I can help you get one step further in the direction that you want to go. We've been able to meet our listeners from this podcast that have jumped on those relationship talks, and being a free space that's completely private. It's like, oh, I didn't really know what to expect. And after this relationship talks call, it's like, I have so many new awarenesses. I have so many new tools, and they're completely custom to my situation, what I'm going through, or what me and my partner are going through. And so much gratitude comes after that. So That link will also be in the show notes, and we would love to meet you. We don't bite, and we have a lot of fun in those, actually. So every Saturday, it's open to you.
And here's how we're certain that we can help you. We both, in our teens, were emotionally immature. And we don't want you feeling bad if you feel that way. We're still working on this too. Me more than you, love. You've been working on this a lot more intentionally than I have. But I'm going to be even more intentional moving forward. So we don't want you feeling bad if you feel like, oh, I'm emotionally immature. That's the first start to being found is admitting you're lost.
Yeah.
It's okay. Totally okay. Admit you're lost. We will help you find yourself, your better self. Okay. As always, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for listening. And it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is Lazaros88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.